It's always a pleasure to be talking to somebody who is a part of academics. I personally come from a college, which is considered to be one of the best inside India for MBA education. It is amongst top 5 ranked MBA colleges inside India. So I do understand, once somebody from Cornell speaks, right, it matters a lot. So I welcome you, Frank. Thank you so much for joining us. And I hand it over to you to take us through your journey so far, both your professional experience. I know you have been a part of the HR domain for quite a long time, and now you are into academics. So over to you, sir.
Well, first of all, thank you, my friend, and appreciate the invitation. Very humble. Thank you, listeners and viewers, for taking the time for yourself to just listen to us and take time for yourself on the development and growth, etc. So I only hope to do justice on that, and thank you again. So, Frank, I'm he. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'd like to start a little bit of introduction for around the journey because that kind of influences it as well. Use he, him, his pronouns. I'm in the state of Texas here in the United States in a small community called Fair Oaks. I identify as male. I identify as an ambivert personality wise. So if you're familiar with kind of the major personalities, introversion, extroversion, ambivert, or being an ambivert right there in the middle. I enjoy, I get excited about, connecting with folks and that warm feeling, but I also enjoy a bit of solitude and reflection and just kind of listening to folks a little bit more quiet. Dark brown skin. I identify as Hispanic or Latino here in the United States. I'm a father of a 7-year-old boy, a husband of a beautiful wife, Elizabeth, of now 14 years. And she is my North Star a number of times. And, I consider myself a people and culture leader, 2 decades now. And you said a bit of time. Yes, 2 decades now and cross industry experiences around data driven designs, inclusive initiatives, talent, organizational development. All that to say, my name is Frank. No need for formalities. I go by Frankie G, all about prosperity and being a people enthusiast. But being a people enthusiast and really that energy that's created around people, it really started in my formative years. Both my parents were very, very welcoming. A story I like to share sometimes is they were almost like here in the U.S. There's something called a like halfway homes or kind of shelters for those that are kind of traveling through and trying to get back on their feet, whatever it may be. And my both my parents didn't have a whole lot, but they gave all they had, right, to friends and family. And I always remember growing up, well, who's that on the couch? Who's that in taking the room? Who's that doing this and that? And I would question, and my parents would just say they're just trying to get back on their feet. And sometimes we would see the same folks. And I think that bit shaped who I am as a person, where I don't necessarily judge, and I'd love to center others and their experiences and what's going on. And I will say, when I formally got into the workforce, I spent a number of years in health and human services. Health and human services here in the US, it's a lot. There's hospitals, residential treatment centers, protective services, so many different things that center people and their needs. And you see what the disparities are when they don't get what they need right away. You see that up front. But yes, I've spent some time in insurance, in banking, quick service restaurants, both stateside and global, and also a bit of time as a private consultant. So I've seen a number of different industries at small, mid scale, large scale, all trying to solve some of the same things. And I say part of my journey, I'll say a couple of things, and I'd love to hear your reaction, your thoughts as we look forward, right? If I were to kind of summarize this, it's humanize the scale. That's always been part of the journey. Humanize the scale. And what I mean by that is a couple of things here. If tech can scale systems, then leaders must scale trust. Because in the age of AI and technology, the most human companies will be the ones that win, that survive, that will be part of the future that we're always talking about. What's the future? What's next? What's next, right? The other part of that is we're entering into an era where AI can personalize your career faster than your manager can schedule a one-on-one, right? You're trying to find time between each other, but AI could probably personalize your career faster than that. So the real question and the real problem right now is how do we keep talent development human as we scale it with AI or with machines? Love to hear your thoughts about that, my friend.
Absolutely, Frank. First of all, thanks for a great introduction because, and I somewhere feel that, my energy is kind of, gets in sync with people from across the globe or maybe universe. Is that, you know, what I firmly believe is what you told is that, especially people coming from humble backgrounds and getting into the workforce and then kind of starting from rock bottom and going on top. And top is kind of a relative term, right? It may differ from people to people. Our goalpost keeps on changing, right? Like, I can still think, like, 10 years back, if my goal was, say, having x amount in my bank, now it has changed to, say, 5x, and still I'm not happy, right? So that is something which can't give you happiness, right? But the way you took us through your background, the way you took us, how you started, and having such a great parents in place, great family, great wife, great children, that is what people underestimate a lot, because that is what gives actual happiness. Like, I am good staying in even in a two-star hotel when I go for a vacation. If my wife is there with me, than to stay in a five-star hotel all lonely and just kind of, showing off that I'm having a great champagne, right? Or a wine, right? It doesn't gives you happiness, right? And this is what people miss out. And thank you so much, Frank. And, for somebody like you in the HR space, it, it adds a lot of value because you rightly mentioned that, there is a lot of trust deficit, and cultures get destroyed because of it. Even if I talk from an Indian perspective, the trust deficit is huge, it's humongous. And if you talk about US, there is trust deficit, but it's lesser as compared to what you talk inside India. In India, there's a lot of problem of workplace, the culture not being good, or people kind of leaving the organizations in a very short span of time, or even if they're there for a short span of time, it's taking a hit on their mental health. They're not happy with their bosses, managers not inculcating that trust. All those things are kind of endemic inside the country in which I live in. And I find a lot of these problems there in the US as well, but maybe at lesser scale, or something like that. But I would go to the first question that I have for you. And you have been into, very big brands. One of them have been Yum Brands. I was going to, and why Yum Brands attracted me, because it was considered to be one of the best companies where you get placed while I was in my preschool. So people used to fight to get into Yum Brands. I think one of the global CEOs or somebody, I'm not remembering his name. He's an Indian, like he was an Indian. So he came for a guest lecture and he started talking about the culture of Yum Brands. And, we were so convinced. He also played a guitar in front of us. And he told that, this is how and so every one of us was like, we want to get into Yum Brands. It's a day zero company. So in India, in the best B schools, what you find is that it's a day zero placements. Like, so day zero means that the top folks will get placed into the top companies. So that's how it goes, and companies fight for those slots, to get the best talent. And it's same everywhere, even in Cornell or say MIT kind of institutes. So what is the first business challenge, Frank, or Frank G, which is close to you, which you want to discuss, and also tell us how do you think this challenge can be solved, and what are the major pitfalls that an organization should avoid while they are solving this business challenge?
There's so much to be said there, and I think you summarize beautifully part of your experiences and excitement, and I appreciate that. I truly do. You mentioned trust and then technology, right? A bit of woven in the talent or people piece of it. So one of the biggest challenges that I continue to see in my experience is across industries, we're seeing a convergence of essentially four forces at any given time. Now, I'm not going to quantify it by putting a number of one being the least or, five being the best and favorable. There's essentially four at any given time. And that's technology, trust, as you mentioned, talent, and time. Leaders are racing to adapt AI and automation. We know that transformation is a global thing right now. And that's partially impacting the culture, right? And the trust, as mentioned. But what's often missing is the emotional infrastructure to support that change. High performing cultures aren't just efficient, they're empathetic, not sympathetic, they're empathetic wholeheartedly. You mentioned a beautiful story how a CEO came, talked about the culture, but they didn't even play the guitar. Music is soul. Music, you can hear it. If you know a good beat and a good melody, it doesn't matter what language the voice then, the singer is in, right? We love tunes and to be attuned, but they're empathetic. That's those organizations. People don't just fear technology right now. They fear being irrelevant to it. That's the main question right there. They fear being irrelevant to it. There's a few frameworks that I love to approach this. And if I may, I will talk in brief to a few of these and just love your reaction. And folks can definitely reach out to me and or even yourself as an expert on these things. There's a few frameworks because I think frameworks definitely put some freedom to all this ambiguity, but they do frame it just enough for us to not have the fear of anxiety, the worries, or the mistrust that we talk about, right? Because now a framework, you can kind of visualize yourself within a team, within a function, within an organization, within those things. One of the frameworks I love is just a maturity of people strategy. So, and this can be in tandem with technology. But level one is just a process first, right? Being compliant, how your organization needs to function. Level two being a more people awareness, right? Much like a project management, but driving awareness. And that can be off through, one-off programming, trainings, workshops, communication campaigns, etc. Right? So that people feel that they are relevant. You're not obsolete. And it minimizes some of that fear. So maybe sometimes we get stuck in that one or two level. But as you progress, level three could be more of a people centered, embedding through infrastructure, through policies, through platforms, a little bit more of that personalization so that you're optimized not just the business, but the person, right? Again, in tandem, correlated throughout, right? And I think the fourth one at the highest level, and we're always trying to what's the next best thing, but this kind of simplification is easy, I think, to follow on. Are we at a level one, two, or three, or are we at this four, this high level of people driven? Still people at the forefront of the technology, leaders at every level design systems with and for their teams. And that's the highest level right there. The organizations at level three and four are the ones that are seen with the strongest retention, the trust scores, which absolutely can be quantified and measured, and with the innovation to stay sustainable and are going to be the ones driving transformation right now. I think what we'll see, if you agree with me, my friend, we're going to see in the next few months, not the next year, not the next few years. We're going to see in the next few months during this transformation that many companies are going through, the emergence of what that actually looks like. One other framework that I can introduce is kind of a 4T of those forces, right? So again, people don't fear technology, they fear being irrelevant to it. That's a big challenge. So culture must evolve in sync with innovation. And so leaders must influence the culture, not necessarily the people or systems. Influence the culture, because the culture is the environmental structure that will set you up for success. And that 4T, again, is shaping the future of tech, but tech, trust, talent, and time, like we started off. Those have to evolve together and not in silos. So again, those two kind of frameworks are broad, but I think specific enough that you have freedom. Okay, how does that shape? What does that look like in my organization? What do you think?
This is absolutely great because it kind of reminds me like my while I was kind of leading digital transformation for one of the organizations, say 8, 9 years back, and I used to report directly to the CEO of that organization. There were a lot of, so it was basically an infrastructure company, and infrastructure in India, it requires a lot of technology interventions. It's still very outdated. Now it has kind of, picked up. So my role was to find out what innovations can be implemented across the processes and make sure that they are being done at the ground level. And, so as you were telling about culture, that was a single biggest challenge for me because when I took a project, let's suppose I identified, this is an innovation which can reduce, your time or, increase your productivity, improve the the project outcomes, I used to take it to the worst site possible to get it implemented. And when I yeah, so in the initial one or two projects, what used to happen is that when I used to go to the site, people used to see me as if somebody has come from the topmost level and he knows a lot of English and he's trying to teach us how things will work, how processes has to be changed and all those things. And 2 3 months I was like I was confused, I was frustrated. I used to live inside my hotel and used to think that I'm not able to implement this. 3 months afterwards, what I did is that I went to the site. I had a talk with the lowest rung of the employees, say the laborers, the supervisors, assistant engineers. And I told them that I've created a very simple platform where you guys can tell me what is the best that you want and which can improve the things. And Frank, you will be amazed that right from a worker suggesting me that, sir, we need a tent on the site so that it basically doesn't allow water to accumulate in the pit and improves my productivity up to a level of using drones on the site to do predictive maintenance. And then once I started getting these things, I started shortlisting, and then I will take that idea and then go back to the site again and tell that, hey, you know what? You had told me this thing. And I've created a business case. And this, I think 6 7 months, it created a culture inside and across all the people. They started loving me. They started telling me that he's one of us. He's one of us. He's not, somebody who is different. India is a diverse country. Like every state is a different country altogether in terms of culture, in terms of language. So wherever I used to go, first thing is that I will learn 2 3 words in their language, and then I start talking in their own language, like telling that, hey, this is. And then 8 months down the line, I won a CEO award. Where my CEO awarded me that you kind of implemented. And then I thought that, man, 80% times I failed. But one thing which I was able to change, I don't know, whether it contributed to $10 million of improved productivity, 100 million. That's immaterial to me in terms of the success. But the one thing which I did, which I still find in that organization, is that even Frank, the lowest rung person, texts me on LinkedIn, even now, telling that, Rishikesh, you know what? I was thinking that this is what can be implemented on the site.
That's beautiful.
That's exactly when you were telling about the culture, it basically reminded me that, and this is not taught inside MBA books. Like, people think that they can be taught a strategy and all those things. This happens only with experience when you start. And many a times, what I've seen is that very big short consultants, like, I will not take the names of those consulting companies, but you know them, right? They feel that they're intelligent enough. And that is where the problem comes. They are never able to change the culture. They start pressurizing people to implement something, and once they are gone, it basically springs back to the same place where it was. And that is where what you told and what the frameworks that you basically told so much matters. Like even simple use cases, like say the procurement person, he has a different way of working. Like he will always evaluate who are the rudimentary, archaic vendors in his list and then find out one or two. And when I used to go and tell to him that, man, you know what, we are implementing this innovation, so we need a separate set of vendors, like, who may not be your incumbent vendor as such. So you have to do that research. And he never used to give a fuck to me. Like he used to tell, no, you go away from here. You have no KPIs and all those things. You lead digital transformation. It's a air and all those things. And then I went back home and started thinking. So one of the good things which I did is that I used to take it on my own self. What can I do? Like, and Frank, I'm telling you, like, since you have been an HR leader and, I've been lucky to work with a lot of great HR leaders, I went back after 5 days and I told to him, hey, you know what? If we do a research on these two good vendors who can implement this technology, even you will get your promotion faster, because right now what you're doing is your normal task which you're anyways doing. So sometimes identifying the main intent of that person, imbibing that culture in him, that what is in it for him, because culture, what I feel is that comes through those small sparks of change management, I think, like where you have to show that this person did this and so he was, he's doing so well, so other people also start imbibing that. And it's a very difficult task. It's a tremendously, people say that AI has come and all those come, but still I feel that great consultants like you or somebody else, your AI can't replace the human, the angle to it. So that's my viewpoint. I kind of extended it, but yes, I wanted to share this experience with you. Yeah. So we will go to the second business challenge that you feel very close to you.
I'll mention again, thank you again for sharing those stories. I almost forget, wait, am I interviewing you? That's what a conversation is about between friends, right? We're sharing stories that emerge with us, et cetera. And so thank you for sharing those stories. The second business challenge outside of the fear, I think you mentioned it when we started talking about the fear and then, but then you, hey, he's one of us. And then you start to get people on board, et cetera, right? It's the coaching at scale. So coaching at scale, it's not just for executives and it's not just that top down that we always talk about. AI enables micro coaching, reflection tools, and real-time feedback accessible to every employee, every employee. And if anything, what you mentioned it's not going to take the place of people. That's our fear. We will co-create, co-learn with it. It'll be a co-worker with you, right? It will allow you more time to spend that physical time, which was one of those other T's that I told you, right? There was the trust and the time. It will allow you to spend more time with others. And the reason that is such a huge challenge, I still remember being an emerging employee, and you mentioned it too, it could be X amount of dollars is what I thought at one point, but then it changed and shifted. And it's really about adding value. And then it shifted a bit to giving back to others and it shifts, right? But regardless, it's a contribution. Everything takes time. How many times, no pun intended, how many times have we been given feedback and say, well, just put in your time or just wait your turn in time? This will take time. Well, so does trust. So does relationships. So do influence. And so it allows you to fast track trust because you can spend more time with what's more valuable, which is with others and not just creating, as we know, right? The analytics, doing multiple regressions and running all these reports and another slide deck and revising the slide deck and doing a pitch and then presenting in front of another group and then going into a town hall and then answering this, answering that and figuring all this. No, you don't have to spend as much time with that. And the framework that I love around this is even simpler. It's just a 3-word model: talent, AI, personalization. TAP. So talent, you got to map out the aspirations and the skill gaps or, skills that you have. So you must have a cultural strategy, right? That's the T, the talent. The AI, you'd have to have, power the content, create some nudges around there, but also what is the career guidance from an AI perspective, right? Create personalized models for folks so they see themselves on that. And I will end on a story. I'm going to take your inspiration and I'll give you a realistic kind of simple exercise that I saw done twice actually at scale. The last piece is that personalization. So let me expand on that, right? Is adjusting to learning styles and work rhythms, right? Again, personalization. And that's what AI can allow you to do if you embrace it rather than are fearful of it. So again, that TAP model: talent, AI, personalization. One of the simplest things as an HR leader is to embrace the change that's around us. Right now, AI, everybody's talking AI, but guess what? AI has been, just like you've had to go through transformations, you said about 9 years ago. Come on, technology's always been. I still remember being an L&D director, or even facilitator many years ago with really outdated overheads and these really, really big projectors that got really, really hot in the room, and having to use all these different kinds of things. And then I remember, slide decks came around and Google and search engines came around. And rather than be fearful of it, it just allowed me more time to get real time research or real time examples and just create that kind of interaction at a different scale. So most recently, there was a 2.5 day internal conference for emerging talent, right? And what we do was look at emerging talent from what they need from a, connect, share, and learn development standpoint. So we're going to give them a little inspiration, maybe a keynote speaker. We're going to give them some assessment tools. We're going to give them some a little guest lecture from our internal leaders, so a panel, right, to hear from what the leaders. But throughout that integration was just setting aside a little kind of inbox exercise where we got emerging leaders to just, okay, everybody's hard on feedback and performance management and end of year results. and even writing goals, right? Writing goals, if you've ever worked for an organization, or even writing your own personal goals, if you do that, right? If you subscribe to that, it's always hard. You're like, where do I start? I want to lose weight. I want to be a better person. I want to drink more water. I need to eat more, vegetables and fruits. And I want to call people that I love and trust more often. The goals are so hard. What we did was make it simple and said, okay, let's start the personal piece of it, right? So the talent piece of it. Write down a few things that you think you're really good at and some things that you need to work on. Okay, now let's get up out of our chairs for just a few moments. Let's do a little walkabout around the room. And you have 80 plus people in this room. So get some feedback, just some energy. Tell them, ask them, what do you like about me? What are some traits about me? What are my behaviors? What do you know me for? What all these kinds of things, right? Okay, write those down, write those down. Let's do that. Okay. Now comes the AI piece of it, my friend. Sit down, and I don't get paid to say what platform, but it was a mixture of Copilot and ChatGPT and a few other platforms. But just sit down, punch this all in, and say, based on my resume, based on my profile, based on my goals, and based on everything that people are telling me on here, please help me write my end of year goals. Help me write goals for the future, and let me incorporate a few things that have been said in these panels, other things from the leaders, and personalize it right there. So you just did the tap right there. This person looked at their own talent profile with feedback, right, from peers, all the things that they've built up in this workshop. They got a little bit of the AI tool, and now they're personalizing it for themselves. And it created a lot of excitement. It also reduced the fear of people and the AI approach to things. And I'll tell you, my friend, what made it skyrocket is that taking it from this small conference like that, where then we had the CEO, the CHRO, and all the executive team go through similar exercises as well. And then at the next town hall, actually cascade it, right? So that's coaching at scale. Cascade about their own anxieties. They share the stories. They're like, oh gosh,
It's difficult to deliver and it can only be done by somebody like you. So the frameworks makes it easy, but the delivery is very tough. And I've seen that personally. There are a few folks who are awesome at delivering this. So the thing which was going on in my mind is that most of the times people are not kind of confident enough, or they are anxious sharing their weaknesses, especially talking from Indian perspective. US is a different country. I love it. Especially in the ways in which meritocracy is promoted inside that country, and because of which it has become so great. India is also a very meritocratic country, but a long way to go to achieve that particular place. And so what happens is that in India, if you tell, say a bunch of folks to write about what they are weak at, they will start thinking, oh my God, if I write and if this person shares that with the CEO, maybe I may be fired. That thing comes to the mind, right? It will come to my mind as well. So that's why I'm sharing that with you. And then the people, what they do is that instead of writing the actual weaknesses or actual improvement points, they will write something very diplomatic. And what is that diplomatic thing is that I want to work on my, say, time management skills. I want to work on these. So the point is, with the right, they're like, very diplomatic. Likewise, if you're interviewing somebody and if you ask them weakness, right, a lot of the times they're being taught inside their colleges to make the weakness very diplomatic and also tell them what they're doing to handle that. But I've been a crude person. Like, if you ask me my weakness, I will tell it very frankly that this is my weakness. I'm trying to manage my emotions well. Sometimes I get very angry at times with my own self and what is happening with me. So I'm very frank in that, because I know, you may judge me. You may judge me because 60-70% people do judge you. But I think the remaining 20-30% people matters a lot. People who will actually understand. So that is why I told that delivering that is very critical, because somebody like you have to build a trust in those employees. Frank, if he's asking me to write something, this will be used for my benefit rather than being used for. And with this tap model, you have, so one of the things, Frank, which I feel, and I would like to take your insights on, is that there's a lot of L&D tools that came to the market, say 20 years back till now. But what they miss out on is proper customization and personalization. They have tried to increase engagement. They will make you play games. They will make you play quizzes. They will make you do all the sorts of things. But the tap model, the last one, the personalization thing, is what they miss out. They don't know what Rishikesh wants to learn, or what is he weak at? What are your views on that? Like, especially especially from technology perspective, if you have seen those kind of L&D tools out there.
I have not seen a tool personally that will capture that, but that's where the human element must
Yes.
ensure that whatever tool you're using, that you provide the appropriate
Yes.
problem statement, right? The proper input so that you get the right outputs, right? Is still Lean Six Sigma. It is still project management where you provide the right problem statement, then the acceptance criteria will be better or at least more accurate, correct? What I have personally seen done well is that you do use a an AI platform and and you give it questions or prompts such as I'm trying to create a training for, tell it the audience, the who, tell it the what, give objectives of what you think. And this is after, of course, a needs analysis, which is still going to be very a human touch. A needs analysis, for those that are unfamiliar, is just simply why do you feel or what do you need for people to think, say, or do differently based on this workshop, this learning experience. Notice I call it workshop and learning experience, not learning and delivery, because that those terms also are seeming to become a bit antiquated and obsolete, right? It should always be an experience, something that you gather something from. And it is work. It's a workshop. But you do a needs analysis in these prompts, right? So these are the prompts that you're giving it. The learning style and the personalization just comes from something very simple in the mind. And this is what I've learned over the years, but this has worked well for me as well as I've, educated myself on some of the human nature piece of it. It's just ensure that you have the right brain and the left brain accounted for when it comes to the outputs of learning. You talked about games. Well, that's much more of the right brain folks, right? They love the who and the maybe the little bit of the why, right? They like the connection piece, but now you're missing out on the left brain folks, which they just want data and what. So you have to have a combination of both. So one of the prompts I've actually given to an AI platform may be as you develop exercises for this objective, ensure that you account for the learning styles of who, the what, the why, the left and the right brain there. And I'll tell you, some of the exercises that come up are really great. Okay, just a question prompt or just a prompt for that's the exercise. Or you do have to do, small breakout groups. And those things have not evolved because what is the center thing of this all? I mentioned at the very beginning, humanize the scale. It still has to have humanization in there along with the automation, right? And so to summarize that, you still have to have some sort of takeaway culture plan from any workshop or experience. And that one word, that one action that people take away is what they need to implement. Now, where people fall short, of course, still many times, myself, I've gone through those trials and tribulations, is scaling the follow up. But AI can help that out too. Set reminders. What is a good scale that I can be able to implement to ensure that the behaviors are sustained after this workshop, after this experience? But that learning style that you mentioned, it's something simple. Left brain, right brain, make sure that you account for people that love the connection, but need to be grounded a little bit more on data. Ground the data, but they need a little bit more humanization. Combine those two, and you'll tap into all people's experiences. No worries, my friend. You still can. No worries.
I'm gonna learn this word from you. So a gem of a person. So he's now the learning experience head for DXC technology now. Right. So and what we used to do is that whenever we used to do a particular small course, 1 hour something on LinkedIn Learning, we used to share that in a WhatsApp group, and everybody used to clap on that. Hey, oh, you know, this guy has done something good. And I don't know, this person imbibed that culture within that organization. Like every second day, third day, he will come to my cubicle, he will go to some other's cubicle, and he will keep on talking, he will keep on understanding the personalization piece that you were talking about. Like, what do you think you are missing out or something like that? And then he will keep on suggesting us that this is something that you should do. Sometimes he will have a cup of tea with me also, walking during the lunch and all that. And why I say this, because these HR leaders make a hell lot of a difference with which people don't understand it. I stayed in that company for around 2.5 years. I would say not much because of my reporting boss, but because of great HR culture. You know,
Mm.
the folks in the HR team. And And that is something very relatable. So I will go to the next business challenge, the third one, which is close to you, how it can be solved, what should an organization do to implement that?
It's still going to be around the same theme, right? So it's going to be purpose over programs, and I think from a one size fit, one size to a one of one. And what I mean by that, two things: purpose over programs, right? Learning, leadership aren't one-off initiatives. They're signals of who the organization chooses to be day in and day out. You mentioned you stayed much more because of the HR culture, the driven, right? The platforms, the policies, the perks, the pay, the purpose that you were provided, much more than your actual direct leader is what I heard. Please, correct me if I'm wrong. That purpose over programs, there's an ease framework around that too. It's a future ready talent strategy. That ease, EASE, is engage with equity. So ensure there's always going to be inequity. So let's just be honest. You're never going to achieve equity. It's an aspirational goal, but a great one. So ease with equity. How do I engage with equity? How do I align with purpose? Because there's lots of research. If you look at my LinkedIn or TikTok or Instagram, I actually posted a quick video recently, just a couple of days ago, where the research will back up that if a person's personal purpose doesn't align with the organization's purpose, then of course there is a decrease in these extras that people do, which is aligning and attuning with their coworkers and doing additional things that create innovation and actually drive that engagement. That's something that is simplistic, but very powerful and backed by research, right? So engage, align with purpose, support, the S, support with systems. You mentioned the system. Everything that you've ever driven in transformation has been supported by systems. So there's the S. We are totally aligned there, my friend, and attuned. And the E is evaluate. You still have to evaluate. I don't think we do a good job. That's a big problem within that ease model. We don't do a good job of evaluating with both business and belonging metrics. And belonging can be defined a number of ways, but essentially it's still connection, humanistic connection. That's the most simplistic way. And there's a number of different ways that you can, assess quantitatively what that is. And again, this signals to you and to all of us who the organization chooses to be every day. The other easy one that I can say is that from one size to one of one, AI is a shifting talent development, right? And we need to go from generic to personalization and that pathway. And there's three levels to it. So level one is reactive, meaning that LMS is driving this and it's very, kind of static content that we talked about, right? Just kind of compliant things. Level two is responsive though. And that's where AI can help curate the content, very specific to by role and by skill. I mentioned a really great story about putting a bunch of emerging talent, 80 plus folks in one room. But within that room, there was so much different role diversity and skill diversity that was some of the feedback that we got, right? So you have to be responsive. And that level three is adaptive. And when we talk about transformation, that is completely about adaptation, right? So be adaptive. Your talent journeys shape and need to be shaped in real time by behavior, by feedback, and by that business context. So that again, we reduce our fear. We see ourselves not only you mentioned about, fear of doing the wrong thing or speaking up, etc. My friend, that is even here. I've grown up with that culturally. I've seen that in the business. But what I will say as a piece of advice is that we have to see ourselves as followers as well. We talk about leadership all the time. Leadership is the influence of fill in the blank. Followership is how I am influenced, fill in the blank. So see yourself as a follower. And what is the greatest followership that gets recognized through these kinds of models is those that can balance critical task and engagement. The two, those are the folks that absolutely are rock stars in any organization, regardless if you have that fear. It's the fear that we all have. So you're not alone. I will say that too. You're not alone in that fear. Frank has fear. Just put FF. Frank has fear sometimes too. And we all do, and embrace it. So those are just a couple of models that kind of come to my mind, and the biggest challenge around that, and kind of pulling a little bit more on that personalization.
Absolutely great. I think we have discussed three very relevant business challenges, Frank. And This is a very humanly insights that you have given, and which will help a lot of startups and also industry leaders understand these challenges in details. But before we wind up, we have a couple of very good questions for you. One is that, when did you decide to leave your corporate job and come into sort of academics, and why was the decision taken?
Great people, great brands, and moving the business forward. I will never say I've made that decision to completely leave, but it's just a reset and a recharge that we all need. And it's perfectly fine to do throughout your career. There's never a right or wrong time, I'll say.
Now, the last question is, tell us about one company in which you have worked in and still you miss the culture, the workplace.
That's not fair. That's not fair. We're not supposed to do that. We're not supposed to talk about those companies, good, right, wrong, or indifferent. It would still go back to my days with Health and Human Services. It's not necessarily a company for profit. It's a community run public government institution. If you say made a enterprise made up of a number, but the reason I miss it, I think about it, I reference it, I talk about it most. I talked about it in my opening and my journey a little bit more probably than I brushed over on some of my other journey points, is because the mission was so clear. It aligned with my own personal purpose and passion, so that the end product, should we say, the behaviors were so easy to align and attune with. And it was to help others. To help others. Sounds simple, but it was massaged in every single interaction, every single meeting we had, that everybody, as you mentioned before, the front line that can contribute all the way to your senior leadership, every single level of the organization understood, in my opinion, their contributive value to the organization. That if you put somebody to the side and you ask them, how's your day going? What can make it better? What do you do at this organization? What do you do? And literally, I had done those walkabouts. Everybody was clear about their contribution. So I still miss those times.
If I want to ask you that there is one workplace where you worked and you can't forget it, like you still rejoice those experiences and it keeps on coming back to you, and you feel happy, and once you close your eyes, you feel that this was a great tenure of mine.
That is so unfair, my friend. We're not supposed to label our experiences in any of the organizations that we've worked for, but right, wrong, or indifferent, I think I go back to my first introduction, which was around Health and Human Services. It was not a for profit organization. It's a public, community, government run institution with a lot of transparency. And I think their transparency created the trust, it fostered the trust. We are accountable. Our policies, our procedures were all for public display. Even our pay difference was on public display, which is a lot of what organizations try to do. And yes, I brushed over some of my other experiences around insurance and banking and quick service restaurants and private consultancy, and haven't really touched so much on my current facilitation at Cornell. Going back to those times, it was because the mission aligned with my own personal purpose, which was helping others. And at every level of the organization, across this enterprise of 55,000 plus employees, you could take anybody aside and ask what their contributive value to organization mission was. And without hesitation, any level would give you a finite, very passionate response of how their role contributed to the overall value. And I think a number of different things. Again, that transparency and trust, right? The time it took. But I close my eyes and I just think about the people, the development, the energy that was created around us in tandem with that mission, something that will go beyond pay and perks any day, my friend.
Absolutely, Frank, and this was so well answered. Like, I love it, the way you took this up. And the best part about this podcast was that everything came out from your heart, right? So that is something which is so critical, is that people have to show their own side, in order to build a very good culture, is what I feel. Is that the day when I don't fight with my wife, I think the day has not gone well.
Mm.
But it's still, we are together for so many years, and that is what people miss out, is that it's not misunderstandings, it's about not taking enough effort to build that culture where misunderstandings can be solved.
Mm.
So that is,
Good.
thank you so much, Frank, for joining us, and it was immense pleasure to host you. I don't know, but what I feel is that, there are ways in which energies match, and we keep on meeting those people whom we start respecting a lot. And after this podcast, I have a human side to your face. I saw you on the LinkedIn. I had some X belief. Now I have some X plus something, or X minus some belief. But enormous respect for leaders like you who are trying to change, or trying to imbibe this kind of a culture within organizations. And we seriously hope that a lot of people can approach you and can take hints from you, can take your advice on how they can implement a better culture within their organization and help their organization grow. Thanks so much, Frank. If you're
Thank
okay, I
you.
would like to take your calling number as well, so that I be in touch with you, and we'll keep on updating about what we are doing at Dawdle. And that's it.
Sounds good. Be well, be safe, my friend. I appreciate it. And everyone else, thank you.
Thank you so much, Frank. Let me text you on LinkedIn.